Hey everybody, we're going to go look at some more ancient America today, and we're going to go down to a region that the sites were pretty congested and there's some pretty amazing ancient cities down here. But we are going down to Portsmouth, Ohio today, and this is known as the Portsmouth Earthworks, and there's really three different sites. I think they're known as sites A, B, and C, and we're going to go down and take a look at each of these. The first one we're going to look at is located right in the city here. And there was a series of earthworks here and just one remains. And here you see it's located right in the middle of the city. And there was a whole series of earthworks here. But this is what remains today. And let's see if we can get a better view. But here we are from 2012, and the shadows aren't quite so big. You get a little better view of it here. And we are perfectly aligned to north, so that appears to be depicted here. Now let's just measure this thing here. I would say it's roughly maybe about 190 feet long, and that would be what, about 57, 58 meters. Now here is a little look down on Google Street View, and you can't get a good look really because of the trees, but here is just one place where you can get a little peek at it. And here is a pic I found. I'm not sure if this is the same wall. I don't think it is. I couldn't really make this pic fit on Google Earth, but here is the remnants of an earthwork in the town of Portsmouth. Now here is another pic and just some general information. It says the Portsmouth Earthworks are a large prehistoric mound complex constructed by the Hopewell culture mound builder indigenous peoples of the eastern North America approximately 2,000 years ago. And the name Hopewell, well, that's just a name from one of the researchers because we really don't know the exact name of these people. The site was one of the largest earthwork ceremonial centers constructed by the Hopewell and is located at the confluence of the Scioto and Ohio rivers in present-day Ohio. Now here is a pic of what was originally here. We have many circular hinges. And if I was just looking at this for the first time without a description, I would say this is in the UK. We have horseshoe-shaped hinges, circular hinges, and alleyways, just like at Stonehenge. What do these pathways depict? Well, since this is perfectly aligned to north, that is probably the winter solstice alignment right there. I am just guessing. But here is the modern city. Here is that hinge right here. And this is the way it looked a long, long time ago, before this ancient history was paved over and a city put here, but one hinge still remains. Here is the present-day city of Portsmouth. Here is where that single horseshoe-shaped hinge remains. This is what it looked like maybe a couple thousand years ago, or whenever this place was built. Very interesting ruins here coming from this area of Ohio. The ancient people who lived in the ancient U.S. definitely used the rivers as highways. And here, the Ohio River was an important freeway. And this river here, the Scioto River, was an important off-ramp. So this made this place obviously pretty important, or a good site to build an ancient city. But the second of the three sites I want to talk about is right across the river. And today, pretty much nothing here remains today. I imagine flooding had something to do with it. And this is also on farmland, and that isn't good. But possibly the remains of one of those alleyways, possibly right here. If you go in and look at it that good, it kind of appears that way to me. But you notice this little creek here. I think this is what these trees cover. But here is what it looks like. Here is where you get almost a hint of a pathway. And let me just show you this diagram that was done about 150 years ago. This is what it looks like, and those pathways seem to be going through this creek area. And these were very long. This center box here covered 15 acres, and these pathways, though they were fairly narrow, covered 10 acres. And that's the way it looked like here about 2,000 years ago. Now, the other site is just up this way a little to the east. And this site, I'm a little confused about where the mound is, the central mound. But let me just take you down here, and if anybody can provide further information, because I just looked at this for a bit and I couldn't determine where the mound was, and I have two locations that are possible. One is right here, but the third site is called the big site, and this is what it looks like. This is one possible site for the mound, and today it looks like there is a solar panel on top of this, if that indeed is a mound, and just by the way it looks, it appears to be. And isn't that ironic? A couple thousand years ago, they were worshiping the power of the sun. Today, getting the power of the sun from solar panels. But the other site I thought was possible is this one just across here. And I found a pic to go along with this. But these appear to be creeks under here, and I'm just not sure if there was a creek running through those that arced circle. But this appears to be an ancient mound that today, covered by trees, you really don't know what it is overhead. But here is a pic I found coming from a long time ago of the central mound, supposedly at the big site, and you can get a little few traces of that arched circle around it. And I think it was the second site I showed you, just because this mound isn't as big as the one that the solar panels appeared to be on. But I think that was a mound. But here is about the only pic I could find. And here is a little better diagram that was done in the 1800s. Terrace circle. And this pathway, it says the Ohio River was 1.5 miles away from here. But this pathway, if I go over to this pic here, this is an old map drawn of the area when people were doing research here. Here is the Biggs site, as it is called. And on this diagram, these pathways are not oriented north-south. I should point that out. But here you see the pathways that were depicted going from site to site here at the intersection of these two rivers. Here is the site in the middle of the city. Here's the big site, and here's the one along the river down here. And if I back out here, that is the mound with the solar panel on it right there. So that big site is somewhere right in this area here. I just couldn't determine exactly for sure, positively, where exactly it was. Now, people say Adena or Hopewell culture built this, and those are just modern names because we don't know who they were. They say this was built about 2,000 years ago. Does this look like anything? Well, it looks like the arced circle with the central mound at Poverty Point. People in videos about Poverty Point just say that that is an arc. But I think half of that arc was wiped out by flooding because all that remains at Poverty Point is above a certain elevation. Were they building the same thing here as they were at Poverty Point? The only problem is Poverty Point was built well over a dozen centuries earlier, supposedly, than this. So I just have serious questions on the dating. And in case some of you aren't familiar, here is a diagram of Poverty Point, what remains today. An arc, people say. I think this was a circle around a central mound. Here is a little clearer version of that map. Here's the big site, and these sites were all connected. And this is Portsmouth, Ohio. There is some rich history here coming from at least a couple thousand years ago. I certainly do not have a shortage of topics to talk about, but I'm getting more and more questions in my mind the further I go. Ancient US, pretty fascinating. Hope you thought that was cool, and you all have a very nice day.